this is Shabs, and on today's call I have great pleasure to introduce my model guest to you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he really is a model. Also an advocate of sustainable living and permaculture, all the way in New York. Let's say a big hello to Anthony Anderson of rawmodel.com. Hi Anthony.
Hi Shabs, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Your modelling career got you interested in healthy living and in particular raw veganism. This then led you to your ultimate passion, which is spreading ideas and awareness about sustainable living, and as you put it in your own words, replanting paradise on earth, which I just love the sound of. So Anthony, in your own words, tell us about your journey of becoming a model and how that led you to your calling of replanting paradise.
Modeling, that's a great, I love how you, you set that up, that's so good. Modeling came to me very randomly. I was about 17 years old, and growing up in Minnesota, that's where I'm from, everyone's very humble there. You don't really toot your own horn, so to speak. And I was very, I wouldn't say that I was insecure, but I was just very humble and modest. And a few people started suggesting that I look into possibly doing some modeling. And I thought maybe we'll check it out. And then I found a convention that was taking applicants, and you could go to a convention and submit your photos, and then you can meet all these agents. And I was 18 at this point then. And so I did it, and it ended up working out. I was doing a few jobs in Minneapolis with companies like Best Buy and some of these prom catalogs. And then slowly but surely I started doing some more work, and then by the time I was 22 I went out to Paris with my Minneapolis agency for another convention, like a European one. And then at that point I moved to France. I lived in Paris for a year. I had an agency in Paris, and then I lived in Milan, and then also came back to New York about maybe 9 months after that. So then at around 2004, kind of a long story, but at 2004 I started working seriously. Back in Europe I didn't have it all dialed in yet. I wasn't so sure about my diet yet. I wasn't, the discipline wasn't quite there, so I was still struggling a bit. I maybe made about $4,000 that first year in total.
Okay.
And then, so it was something, I had already graduated school, and I was just wondering what I was doing. So by the time I came to New York City, I was bound and determined to make it really work. So I took my diet to the next level, and then within a few months I started working serious jobs, and I started saving some money. And it was this beautiful marriage of wanting to be healthy and then wanting to work. So it really gave me the motivation to dig deep into the diets and the green lifestyle. And when I saw that it was working, not only was I feeling better, but I was actually making money because of it. I was really motivated, so I took it really seriously.
Yeah.
And then through that, got into gardening. All the way through, I was still working and doing very well. Got into gardening, was growing stuff out on my fire escape. I had like wheatgrass and other stuff, growing kale. And then I bought some property. I was always thinking about purchasing a homestead, so I was saving my money all the way through. And then I bought some land, and I started a homestead in Minnesota by my parents' place, right across the road.
Nice. Yeah.
I have like 1 hectare there, and planted a bunch of fruit trees. It's called a food forest. There's a greenhouse. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of different varieties of fruit trees there. Wow. And it's kind of in my way like my retirement plan, and also a retirement plan for my family. So not only are we getting really amazing food, and then it's eventually it becomes free because we just have to pick it, but then it's like a long-term stable food supply for my friends and family that would live there. And then that's I realized through that seemed to be almost like a panacea for everyone, to create that space, because not only are you supporting your physical health with the food, but also your emotional health and then your economic health. So it seemed like it was all lining up, and then it was the most environmentally friendly thing to do, and also the most self-serving thing to do. So I realized this would be the best thing to start talking about. Because of my diet, I took raw veganism very seriously for about 5 years. And then it started to kind of level off, and I was thinking maybe it would be more wise to expand and explore a little bit. So I was getting more into animal products, all high quality, locally sourced animal products. And then at that point, I felt very good. I felt stable, and I realized that maybe I shouldn't be so focused on dietary and instead more focused on just lifestyle. And then the dietary stuff will naturally come into play. Yeah, and at that point, I created an organization, more of an idea or a concept, like a pet project called Grow Paradise.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Grow Paradise. Yeah.
Grow Paradise, it's been an interesting journey with this, because it started off when I was co-founding Blackbird Naturals in Arizona, and that's where we came up with the idea of Replant Paradise. And then it was just like making a lot of sense. We were using the funds to plant our garden and really spreading that idea. And then once that relationship ended, because I started it with my girlfriend at the time and her mom, and so when the relationship started to end, it seemed difficult to do the business as well. But we're still great friends. So everything's very cool. But we decided that it wouldn't be best to do business together. So I started to do Grow Paradise on my own. Yeah. And focusing more on the permaculture and landscape consulting. And then also basically just spreading the idea of intentional paradise creation with human hands. So using just a shave of our resources to, instead of the dark side, the violent stuff, use just some of that for paradise creation, creating eco-villages and planting a lot of fruit trees and spreading that idea that humans can indeed be a positive force on the environment and their community.
That's amazing.
And that's really the big concept, is paradise creation, getting back to where we're at and looking at some of the leaders in our society and wondering why they might not be so engaged with paradise creation, because they have the resources and they've had the resources for a very long time. So it seemed to me like it wasn't their motivation to create paradise. And they would talk about how we were kicked out of paradise at the beginning of time, but there was never any solution to recreate that with all the resources that they have and that we have as a collective whole, as humanity. Because I know, quite simply, myself doing it almost alone, I was able to create this beautiful food forest within just a year. Yeah. Really, it does not take long at all. So one person doing one piece, so I was thinking, wow, if billionaires and millionaires could be focused on this, we could easily turn it around and have a really fun time at the same time. So the again, like the bigger vision would be to buy neglected pieces of land, like old farmland that was perhaps used for GMO, take that, completely heal it, shape it out, put lakes and hills, and then make a food forest, make an eco-village so people can live there. And even create it so people that are perhaps like abused women, we could create a village for them and their family, and then they can live in a paradise food forest. I mean, it would be an amazing TV show. It's just like the possibilities are endless with this.
Yeah, and I think it's great what you're doing to raise awareness of this. It's very important.
Yes, I've partnered up with a middle school of age 11 to 13, 14 up in Harlem. And so I go up there and talk to the kids about, tell them that I'm a model first, because it lays the foundation for them to pay a little more attention to me, and I show them the photos that I've done, like a billboard in Times Square, so they know that I'm for real. And then I start talking about healthy food. And then from there I bridge it into gardening. So I say, kids, no matter how much money you're making, whether you're making $10,000 a year or $10 million a year, you're still going to want to have that peaceful paradise garden in your space. Whether it's a sunflower sprouts like we have here, or a big food forest, that would be the baseline. Like, you're going to want that. So then when you're raising children and for your parents, everyone's in this paradise landscape, and it's just such a beautiful experience to share with your loved ones. So I drop those kind of ideas on them, and then especially bring home the idea that healthy food helps with your skin, helps with your overall just well-being, and help me make money as a model. So it really kind of drives it home for them. A good example is Hugh Fernley-Whittenstall of River Cottage, and the River Cottage is on Channel 4 in the UK. And he would go, there's one of the series, it's called River Cottage Every Day. Okay. And he would go in and show them how to make pancakes and show them how to make like fun foods at home so they don't have to do takeaway, all those ideas. And I think it's the most important thing is to go into the schools and to make it cool and fun.
Yeah.
because a lot of the teachers that are there are perhaps a little bit older, and they're not seen as cool peers in a way. So if I can come in like a cooler older brother,
Yeah.
I think my message might go a lot further than if it was someone in their 60s or 50s.
If anyone listening is new to the term permaculture, and
Yes.
probably doesn't really know what it actually means, how would you explain that to them?
Permaculture is basically landscape design with the intention of paradise, and it's consciously designing landscapes so it's conducive to creating abundance for humans, for animals, wild animals, domesticated animals. And it's a term that was coined by a man named Bill Mollison. He's the father of permaculture. He's a Tasmanian man. He created this concept maybe back in the mid-1970s. And it's a term that stands for permanent agriculture. It's basically creating landscapes with the intention of paradise. Human habitats, full abundance, and then edible landscaping. So if my grandmother were to ask me what it is, I would say it's edible landscaping. We're planting fruit trees everywhere instead of this tree. We're planting raspberries underneath and just creating that garden, almost like a Garden of Eden, that paradise garden. The concept itself has been around for a long time. I mean, natural farming, there's a really famous man named Masanobu Fukuoka, which wrote a book called The One Straw Revolution. And it's all about not using pesticides, honoring the earth, taking care of the soil, including insects and respecting the biodiversity. It's basically teaming up with nature and observing her and how she works and going along with her plan, and then just kind of shaping it for some more human needs, like some more apples or some more plums, more mangoes.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea. You're looking at biodiversity, and you're looking at a lot of plants that live a long time, so we don't have to plant them every single year. So basically it just comes down to harvesting.
Yeah, okay. So how important do you feel it is to raise awareness about sustainable living and the message of permaculture?
I feel like it's really the most important thing right now. It's the most important thing for humanity in general and for all of us, whether it's in the developing countries or the developed. More so even on a spiritual, emotional level, because in the developed world, we've come so far from nature and from each other, where most of us can't even stand to be around each other most of the time. We'd rather just kind of watch TV and be alone, but then everyone's lonely. So by creating these spaces, it's really the most important thing, I feel. And especially as a survival as our species, I mean, if we hope to make it another 10 generations or 100 generations, we really have to start implementing some practices that are going to support that. So in the third world, it's really about immediate survival and creating these spots so people can live comfortably without a lot of money. And that was really the idea for me in my 20s when I was kind of coming up with these ideas, was that I wanted to design a lifestyle that wasn't so heavy on the monthly bills. You know, I wanted to do upfront investing where I would buy solar panels and rainwater catchment, so then that would eliminate my energy bill and my water bill and all these things. So by the end of the month, I would just have a little bit of a property tax bill and maybe some traveling. And then everything, and everything else would have been taken care of because I saved in my 20s and my 30s, and then I got it going. So as this applies to the developing countries, some more infrastructure that would provide clean energy like solar panels and windmills, those things can then liberate them so they don't need to have a coal-fired power plant in their neighborhood. And so really it's the most important thing right now. On every level, it's almost like the greatest story ever told, where it's like a spiritual battle, it's a mental game, it's survival for our health, just thriving, like being here on this planet and finally activating. Do wrong.
Anthony, what do you feel are the repercussions if humanity as a collective doesn't take action on improving the health of our environment?
I think we've seen it happening in countries already. You can see the stuff happening in developing parts of China, where it's just, even in the United States, where for instance Detroit or some of these other abandoned countries like around Ohio, Pennsylvania, it's just deserted, you know, and it's dead, especially all the desertification. It's going to be a lot of suffering. It's basically where I feel like inside of us is God, and it's up to us whether we're going to create heaven or we're going to create hell. And the mentality for the past quite a few centuries has been going towards the darker side. And quite quickly we could change that. So I believe like it's the most important thing that we could be doing right now. And there's a very concentrated effort to distract us from that. They want us to watch shows that aren't feeding our souls or feeding our minds. They're not spreading the ideas around that could help liberate us. Because it's not only about health liberation, it's about economic liberation. And there's a lot of distractions out there to kind of keep us entertained or distracted, I would say, but there's so many things going against us, so we really have to be crafty right now and to do these things for ourselves, because it doesn't seem at this point like our leaders, at least our elected leaders, are gearing towards that environment. They're trying to keep us more distracted. I don't want to be focusing on negative things, but it's good to see the landscape how it is. And I feel like those individuals are more focused on our continued indentured servitude more so than our full activation and our freedom. So by seeing that how it is, we can begin to take the steps in our own lives and our own communities, and realizing that it is ourself that we have to, we're the only ones that can save ourselves, basically. So one individual living in the suburbs, they might feel like they're not important or they don't have an effect, but just by doing it in their own life, they're having the effect. Yeah. And then people will always see the positive benefits. And my biggest advice is to keep the lecturing to a minimum and just be blissful and just live the truth. Eat the fun food that you love to eat. You know, if people give you a hard time, just come from love, and try not to lecture so much, because it can really turn people off, you know. So it's really important just to keep it fun and light, but also, you know, very lighthearted and full of positivity. Yeah.
So if there's anyone listening right now and they want to learn more about living sustainably, permaculture, or growing their own food, what are your top tips on how they can get started?
My top tips are to go around in your area, your local food shed, and see what the other people are growing. See what the people that have the orchards, are they growing apples, or are they growing peaches? Are they growing pears or mangoes, coconuts? See what's working in this smaller habitat, because there's what would be the term? It's like microclimates everywhere. There's really microclimates all around, even just looking down in the city here. So we want to see what's working. And then you want to grow plants that don't need so much babysitting. You know, so some plants, they need constant attention because they've, through many years, many decades, they've been coming up with human hands to coddle them. And that's where we see the beautiful fruits and the leaves. But then again, they're always attacked by insects, because their inner immune system has been taken away in exchange for sweeter fruit or more cold hardiness or something. So we want to make sure we can work with plants that are a little more closer to nature. Some more wilder varieties, some of the berries, some of like a wild plum instead of like a really big plum, and those plums will survive much more, and they don't need our babysitting. So that's a big one. And then to grow stuff that can take your cold hardiness level without trying to push it too much. Where, let's say in New York City, we're in zone 6 or zone 7. I can grow peaches here, but to grow figs might be too much. It might just be a little too cold, so I'm always going to be babysitting that fig tree. And instead, I could have just grown stuff that would just thrive without me. And then everything just starts compiling and just becoming so much more jungle-like without much work. And you can save a lot more money in replacement cost as well. Besides that, I would say to check online catalogs as well for good permaculture varieties. Like, there's a lot of plants that will feed other plants. So that plant is going, let's say a Siberian pea shrub, which puts out these little peas, these little pods that are great for chickens. And if you plant that next to a pear tree, the pea shrub will feed the pear tree nitrogen. So that way I don't have to feed the pear tree nitrogen anymore. So by creating nice plant families, they call them guilds, G-U-I-L-D-S, you can eliminate almost all the maintenance.
and you can do this stuff in cities as well. I mean, some people might think, oh, I live in London, or, you know, I need huge acres of land or whatever to start growing food. But is this something you can do if you have like a small apartment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really small is beautiful with a lot of this, and you can actually stack functions where you can have vines crawling up the terrace, and it actually, the cities are some of the best places for it. Yeah, because they hold more heat, because all of these buildings are thermal mass, so they'll hold heat. There's even more CO2 in the air, so sometimes they show that the plants will grow faster from the CO2. And it's easier to find friends that are into it as well. You're not so isolated in the countryside. And just by growing sprouts alone, you could have easily creating $20 to $30 worth of sprouts in your apartment every week, just by having a nice system. When I was living in Brooklyn, I had 4 fruit trees in the window. And they weren't tall, they were probably a meter tall, but they were growing, and even though they weren't producing fruit yet, they were like my little babies, and I knew I was going to plant them in the ground at some time. So it was like this was the nursery. Instead of the full-fledged orchard in the apartment, it was almost like a nursery. So it doesn't have to be the end stage of production. It can be also like the beginning stages or the middle. And then, of course, with sprouts, you can do it anywhere. So sometimes I would really encourage people to be more open-minded about the cities and look at all the possibilities, because it's actually quite easy.
Like you said, if it's something you're interested in, you can do it, you know, in your backyard or balcony or whatever. So it's very doable.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because if it is something that you're interested in, you find a way. But if they want to, they will find a way. They will be sprouting on their balcony. They will be doing something, and it shows. Like, if someone says they have a brown thumb or a black thumb, it's just a matter of loving the plants or neglecting the plants. Like, if you love a plant, and if you see a plant as a sentient being and know that it's alive and that it has feelings and it can read your thoughts, and it really can. There's a book called The Secret Life of Plants. And they've done real proper studies on this, and the plants can read minds. So if I know that this orchid here is alive and I want to take care of her, you know, I just couldn't let her die and shrivel away. So that's the real disconnect that's occurring, is that people don't see plants as living things. They see them more as inanimate objects, and so they're able to neglect them. So if the love is there, you'll have a green thumb, because you want them to survive.
So give your plants lots of love.
And know that they can read your mind.
Really? Okay, I'll have to be careful about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they give the love back as well.
They do. I think they're some of the best teachers, just by being around them and working with them. I think that has a much more profound effect than spending time with a psychiatrist. Or these plants are very healing, and just by having those calm moments and tending them, there's something very subtle that occurs. The thought was, at first when I was gardening, I always had my headphones on. You know, I'd be out in the garden listening to stuff, listening to music, and then it started to shift where I would just be in the silence and just you know, listening to the birds and not really wanting to listen to music. And 10, 12 hours would just fly by. I would forget to eat.
Wow,
yeah. Okay. I would just not even, I would just be, you know, tinkering around. If you've got a big garden, there's always something to kind of look at, and I would be in the flow, like really in the zone, and the time would just melt away. And then what's beautiful is, once you're into like year 3, 4, 5, when everything starts popping, you're standing in the middle of it, and you're like, wow, I created this. It's like an organism on itself, and it's co-created with Mother Nature. So it's like a very deep, heavy feeling that you're almost, you know, it's these godlike actions where you're creating heaven on earth in your own little piece of the planet, but you're doing it, and it's a very holy, sacred act, I feel.
Do you feel it's within our grasp to replant paradise on earth?
Absolutely, it's within our grasp, but we could have it finished in 5 years. The resources are there. The human resources are there. It's all at the fingertips. It's just a change of consciousness, really, and that's where it always was. It's a battle of consciousness, where people are out here every day just struggling to survive and to pay the bills, when instead they could be focused on paradise creation for everyone. And then we could almost eliminate bills by teaming up collectively. And it has nothing to do with any kind of communism or socialism. It's just straight up paradise creation and eliminating all the distractions. So we have so many people that are unemployed or that want some purpose in their life. And this is the most amazing thing to do. And the money's clearly there. I mean, they make the money out of thin air, so the money's there to do this. They spend so much money on bombs and all kinds of pharmaceuticals things, so that's always there. We have the money, we have the people, and now it's more just the vision and implementation. One of my goals is to maybe I could inspire some celebrities, like they could get this idea of intentional paradise creation and then take it to the mainstream more so than I can. People know me, but it's not on any level like that. So I was thinking if someone perhaps like Brad Pitt or whoever, they can start talking about food forests and permaculture, then it would start rolling quicker. You know, we are very much steeped in that culture still, a celebrity culture. So if some of those folks can get on board and start directing that energy towards positive solutions. And really, I'm not even about protesting or fighting the dark side or fighting the negatives. It's like me giving my power to them and giving my anger to them. And I'd much rather just keep that energy and just focus on the positive goodness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a great term. It says, creating a better world with good ideas instead of being mad at bad guys. And you see that so much, where people are always just mad at over here in the States, you know, they're mad at the Republicans or they're mad at the Democrats, and it's like this ongoing, never-ending movie that it's like distracting people. And instead, they should look at themselves and be like, oh, we can, you know, create our own life, and we create abundance in our own neighborhoods, and we don't need any politician to do it, and we don't need any religious figure. We can just do this on our own right now.
So should we move on to healthy living now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how important is a healthy lifestyle to you?
It's of the utmost importance, because even if I go down to 95% of my feeling, you know, like if you're just like a little sick or just a little something, the productivity goes way down, like your vibe goes down. So I know it's not about me surviving into old age, to live to 90, 120. It's about thriving at the current moment and having an awesome life, not being sick. You know, I don't get sick, so for that was a motivation enough. But then the fact that I was glowing and feeling confident, and that I was monetizing on that through my work, the modeling, it's of the utmost importance. So now I try and, you know, spread that idea and get people into it. The motivation has to be there. You know, the self-love has to be there, the desire to want to be healthy and to thrive. And I'm sometimes wondering if there's some sort of inner program that has been placed into many of us where we don't feel like we're good enough. Mm-hmm. We don't feel like we deserve to thrive or to fully activate. And almost like it's a slow motion suicide in a way, you know, where people can really trash their bodies in the name of fun instead of fully activating. So I think it's up to us to make it fun, and to keep bringing like the fun foods and the active lifestyles and the adventures, all the eco adventures, going to waterfalls and meeting really fun, positive people. And I think then they'll see like, oh, this is fun, and I don't have to go to a club to have fun. I can go hang out in the park with people, or I can do both. You know, that's really the idea. So for me, it really hits all corners of my life. But I still do large salads. I eat a lot of seaweed. I have, you know, juice. I'm getting back into green juice now that I'm in New York City again. Coconuts. When I was in Hawaii, I was consuming maybe 8 to 10 coconuts a day.
Amazing, yeah.
Making coconut cream. I'm more of a proponent of higher fat, because I feel like when people eat higher fat, they stop overeating on the carbs. Yeah. Because there's something about the satiation where the brain will just turn off the munchies once enough food has been consumed with fat. But when I'm eating carbohydrates, I can just keep eating. And I would have a lot of weight problems with that because of the never feeling full as a low-fat vegan. So once I started eating some higher-fat products, even avocados and coconuts, but then going into yogurt, full-fat yogurt, butter, you know, I'm a big fan of Kerrygold Irish butter. We get it over here in the States. The more I was eating that, the easier it was for me to stay thin. And it's very counterintuitive to our culture, but if we look around at our culture, a lot of things that they tell us aren't true. So looking at our ancestral diets and seeing what our ancestors were eating 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, even 100,000 years ago, and then trying to model that as closely as possible while still having a social life has really worked for me.
So Anthony, you talk about on your website, I read that you talk about remineralization. So what is this exactly, and how do we go about remineralizing?
I'd say the best way is usually through sea vegetables. Remineralization is basically getting the minerals that are always supposed to be in our diet back in, and especially through organic sources. And by organic, I mean through a plant or an animal, not an inorganic, as in rocks, like rock salt. You know, eating rock salt, we absorb some of it, but it's not like it went through wheatgrass or went through an animal. So it's really important to remineralize that, and that's why it's so nice about sea vegetables, because we can get the full spectrum. And I've heard, I believe it was on the Best Day Ever back in the day, talking about ocean-grown wheatgrass, where they take ocean water and they dilute it with maybe 9 parts rainwater, 1 part ocean water, and then they give that to the wheatgrass, and the wheatgrass will pick up all the minerals of the ocean. And then after a while, the mineral complex in our blood will match that of the ocean somehow. There's some sort of balance. Even gold and silver, it'll be in our bodies. And then you're almost kind of thinking, like, is that some of the magic keys? Like, once all those minerals get back in, does something activate and something awakens inside of us? Like, once we start getting molybdenum and germanium and all these like rare things that have been missing for so long because of the standard diets, then maybe something will happen. So I think it's very, very important. And the easiest way is usually sea veg. Dulse is my favorite, and then it goes into maybe hijiki, wakame, and then kelp. You can always have it as a powder for, you know, a seasoning, but I really like big pieces of dulse, and I like to cut it up and have it with avocado and salad and hemp seeds. It's a really nice way to do it.
Right. So Andrew, do you have any closing messages, a message that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
I would say the best idea is to always come from the intention of having a good time and having fun, because if it's work, whether it's paradise creation or whether it's making food, if it feels like work, if it's not fun, we're not going to stick to it. So when we're doing an exercise routine, for instance, I don't like to go to the gym anymore. I don't think it helps. It takes too much time, and we expose ourselves to a lot of the cleaning chemicals that they use, and there's a lot of germs. I'm not like a big germ phobe, but I just try and minimize, you know, and keep it okay, especially the cleaning products. Yeah. So I developed a nice routine at home. And one of the easiest things to do is to stand up in front of the television or the computer and put on something entertaining, whether it's a documentary or a sitcom or a singing show, and then just pretend that you're either jogging in place or jumping rope. Okay. And just do that. And maybe jogging in place is easier at first. And I like to pretend jump rope because the jump rope doesn't get in the way. Like, I'll stand right back. You can see my pajamas really fast. I'm wearing pajamas here. Okay. So I just do this. Yeah. And I just hop, you know, on one foot for a little while, and I go back and forth, and I'll watch a documentary, or I'll listen to a health interview. And by doing that, I'm able to burn off maybe 500 calories before breakfast in the comfort of my own home. And then I can shower up, I can make my smoothie, and then it's done, you know, and it's consistent. And the consistency is where it's at. When you see someone who's really in good shape, it's not that their routine is good or that whatever. It's that they've been doing it for a while and they've stuck to it. So you know, that's where you see the results. So that's a huge thing, is to always come from the intention of making it fun and making it so it's conducive to last a long time. And then my other thing is just keep spreading the idea of paradise creation, that we as humans are very powerful in creation as well as destruction, and that our powers can be used for amazing things, and we can create so much happiness and abundance, especially if we team up together. So to not be distracted with the news. I really don't even watch the news anymore. I'm quite I'm blissfully uninformed about most of the distractions that they put out right now. So I'm staying focused on going up to Harlem and talking to the kids, my sunflower sprouts, you know, my job, communicating with friends on the computer. It's much better. It's much better. So I've kind of blocked out all those negative sources in my life, and it's led me to just full on, just positive all the time. and just waking up every morning and feeling so much gratitude and a lot of bliss. And I don't really meditate, but my real favorite thing is just to lay in bed, either before bed or when I wake up, or at both times, and just to lay there on my back and put my hand on my heart and just feel the gratitude for all the good stuff that's happened and that's going to happen, and just really let the feelings of it, even if it's only 1 minute or 30 seconds or 2 minutes, just feel like, yes, like thank you. And whoever you're speaking to, whether it's God or the force or your inner self, just be like, thank you so much, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then just start your day. Yeah. And you can do that even in the middle of the day, just walking down the street or on the subway, just be like, thank you, like, yes, thank you so much. And then just keeping that feeling going, and then all the good stuff will keep flowing in.
So Anthony, yeah, thank you for your time as well today. Like I said, I mean, I love your message, and feel that the work that you're doing is very important. You know, for both humanity and the planet.
Thanks.
So keep spreading the message, and I'm right there behind you.
Yes.
So if anyone else wants to sort of find out more about you, where can they go?
Oh, they can contact me. My email is growparadise@gmail.com. Okay. And then I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Anthony.A.Anderson. Because there's a famous actor by the name of Anthony Anderson, so I have Anthony A. Anderson. And then the website is Grow Paradise. My original website is Raw Model, rawmodel.com and growparadise.com. But the Raw Model one was always the food. I've kind of stopped posting on there. I'm thinking maybe I should get back into it with the recipes, just as another outlet. But it's mostly through Grow Paradise.
Also, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. It's always a pleasure to have you all join us. Make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking on the red button below. Feel free to comment and like the video if you liked it. Much love, take care, and I'll speak to everyone soon. Bye.